Today, by popular demand, we're going to be taking a look at the Buddhist deity, Fudo Myoo, his origins, his portrayals in Japanese culture, and we're also going to be taking a look at several exemplary traditional Japanese tattoos. Fudo Myoo literally translates to the Immovable Wisdom King. Fudo translates to immovable, and Myoo means Wisdom King. Fudo Myoo is the central deity of Japanese Shingon Buddhism, and he's the wrathful manifestation of Dainichi Nyorai, or the Great Sun. Dainichi Nyorai is one of the 5 great Buddhas, or Gochi Nyorai, and likewise, Fudo Myoo is one of the 5 Wisdom Kings, or Godai Myoo. Fudo Myoo is acclaimed as a remover of obstacles and as a destroyer of evil. The moniker of the immovable comes because he is not swayed or corrupted by the woos of earthly desires, whether it's greed or power or anything else that comes to mind. He will always uphold the tenets of Buddhism and thus the immovable. As you might imagine, being such a powerful Buddhist deity, Fudo Myoo is portrayed in many different ways. Today, let's take a look at 5 of the most popular depictions. One of the most popular depictions is of Fudo Myoo by himself. You will find him with a weapon, usually a sword in his right hand, representing power and wisdom, and a noose in his left hand, which is used to bind evil. He is also often portrayed with a flame phoenix behind him. Number 2, similar to number 1, is Fudo Myoo in the company of his assistants, Kongara Doji and Seitaka Doji. A third popular depiction is Fudo Myoo thrusting his sword down Yuten Shonin's mouth. And Yuten Shonin is a young monk who had been praying to Fudo Myoo so that he might become a wise monk. And Fudo Myoo was said to have appeared in Yuten Shonin's dreams and made him swallow his sword of wisdom, so to speak. After this episode, Yuten Shonin, who is actually a historical figure, would go on to become an influential chief priest during the reign of the 5th Tokugawa shogun. Another popular depiction, and one that is known by multiple names, is that of Kurikara Ken, Kurikara Fudo, or Kurikara Ryu. In this composition, Fudo Myoo is depicted as a dragon, either wrapping around a sword or wrapping around a sword and biting down on it. The legend goes that Fudo Myoo had met his match, and being of equal power, he transformed into a dragon and bit down the sword to emerge victorious. And victorious he was because the same sword depicted in the Kurikara Ken scene is the sword that Fudo Myoo is seen wielding throughout his portrayals. Some believe this fight scene to be that of opposing religions, with Fudo Myoo, of course, from Buddhist provenance. Japan has historically been influenced by many cultures and adopted elements of them into their own, and the related example is that of the native Shinto religion and the externally originating Buddhism. So as a random cultural note, in Japan, traditionally, marriages follow Shinto practices while burials follow Buddhist rites. And so coming back to the Kurikara Ken depiction, it's actually one of strong religious significance. The last popular depiction that we'll talk about is that of Fudo Myoo and his assistants appearing next to the historical figure, the priest Mongaku. There are, of course, many more popular compositions featuring Fudo Myoo, and of course, if we keep going, then this will never end. And so having said that, having taken a look at the 5 popular depictions, let's see those translated into actual tattoo compositions. The first tattoo work we're taking a look at is by the legendary Yokohama, Japan-based Horiyoshi III. And here we see Fudo Myoo, sword in hand, noose in hand, with a flame phoenix in the background, and accompanied by his assistants, Kongara Doji and Seitaka Doji. This piece is excellent because you see all the elements commonly attributed to Fudo Myoo, and the size of the figures is just right so that you can appreciate all the rich details that Horiyoshi III put into this work. This second composition is by the legendary Asakusa-based Horikazu. Horikazu comes from a very rich family lineage, and here we see a fantastic example of just the main figure, Fudo Myoo. You see Fudo Myoo, sword in hand, noose in hand, with the flame phoenix behind him, and a very dynamic background. It's a very powerful, very beautiful piece. In this third composition by the Oita Japan-based Horiso, here we see the scene of Fudo Myoo thrusting his sword down the priest Yuten Shonin's mouth. And this is a beautiful nukibori composition, nukibori meaning that it doesn't have the traditional background. And it's excellent. You see Fudo Myoo with the flame phoenix. You see very rich details in the clothing, in the sword, and then, of course, the priest Yuten Shonin just kneeling down, taking in Fudo Myoo's wisdom. It's been beautifully executed. You can see that the composition really contours itself perfectly around this person's back, and it's a great example that you don't see quite that often in the West. This fourth composition is by the Osaka-based Horitoshi family member Horiharu, and here we see the kurikarake. It's a beautiful design with many details. You see the gigantic sword there with the dragon just spanning all across the back, of course, wrapping himself around the sword. And you even get to see part of the phoenix, of the flame phoenix in there. Horiharu also added some peonies for some more added beauty, so to speak. And it's just a great rendition of the kurikarake, kurikararyu composition. You also see a great example of that Horitoshi family influence mixed with Horiharu's own flair. It's very rich in details, very well executed, just a fantastic piece. For this fifth example, I wanted to come back to the Fudo Myoo with his assistants depiction. So obviously you see Fudo Myoo in here with Gongara Doji and Seitaka Doji. This composition was performed by the Tokyo-based Houryu, and it's just beautiful, and it's also very different. Houryu has his own style, his own flair, very richly steeped in tradition. And this is a great example of the same body of work, so to speak, executed differently, executed beautifully, executed powerfully. For this sixth composition, you can see a very dynamic Fudo Myoo done by Asakusa Horicho II. You can see Fudo Myoo sword in hand, noose in hand, riding a dragon. It's an extremely, again, dynamic piece, and I really like it because you can really see the effects of using pigment versus the ready-made inks. Not that either is better than the other, but here is a clear example of the difference in the hues that these pigments have to offer. It's also very beautifully designed, and the sizing of the figures is perfect, just spanning the entire back. Makes it a very powerful composition. This seventh example is by the Nara-based Horishi Horiten of the Horikyo family. We actually interviewed Horiten as part of the Figure Behind the Ink interview series here on YouTube and in Spotify, so I highly encourage you to check the interview out so you can learn more about this incredible Horishi. But going back to the figure, here we can see a very different Fudo Myoo, very fierce look in his face, which is actually exactly how he should be looking. And you can see him sword in hand, noose in hand, flames behind him, and featured prominently peonies. Fudo Myoo's robes have a peony pattern, and Fudo Myoo is accompanied by peonies. Lastly, and to close it out, this example here is by the very famous Japan-born and California-based Horitomo, and here we see Fudo Myoo, again, sword in hand, noose in hand, with the flame phoenix in the background, and riding a dragon. It's yet another powerful composition, just showing how the same subject matter can be represented so differently and so wonderfully by the different, very skilled Horishi all across the world. Now, to wrap things up, Fudo Myoo, or the Immovable Wisdom King, is an extremely popular figure in the world of traditional Japanese tattooing, given his symbolism as a protector of Buddhism and as a vanquisher of evil. I hope you found this clip useful. If you would like to see more figures covered, specific themes related to traditional Japanese tattooing, or even interviews with certain Horishi, just drop me a line, let me know, and I'll be happy to get it covered. Thank you for watching. Check out the Waboripedia book if you haven't already, and stay tuned for more content in the world of traditional Japanese tattooing.